All right, good morning, everyone. It's January 7th. We're here for an update with DES. Go ahead.
Yes, commissioners, thank you for the time. I brought handouts as I like to do.
Sure.
Um, just a quick summary. I'm just gonna kind of go over this. It's been a while. I appreciate you guys having me over. I'd kind of like to do this a little more often, frankly.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah. So I don't know if we could do something like this quarterly. I think that would be helpful. Of course, I'm always willing to come over whenever you guys are interested in it.
Yep. Yeah, just get with Helen and just put it on the calendar.
Okay, that would be
Once a
great.
quarter or
And,
whatever.
and most of the time, in this instance, I have a lot of information here just because it's been a while
Yeah.
and just to give everybody a baseline of kind of what I'm doing. So anyway, I will definitely do that. I appreciate the opportunity. And I think it's important for, you to be aware of some of the issues that we're facing. So,
Mhm.
that way folks ask, you don't have to go and ask. You could always welcome to call, of course, but regardless, anyway, so just starting from the top, I just wanted to list our hazard summary that has recently been updated. And I talk about this in the preparedness portion. The hazard summary, Commissioner Doolittle, you'll recall that it used to be called the PDM, Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan. Now it's called the Hazard Mitigation Plan. We're great on acronyms, so HMP. So the hazards themselves have not changed much. The biggest difference, specifically in this year's update, which is a big process, is that it's a regional plan. And I'm jumping right into the preparedness portion of this. But that regional plan is about done. It has to go through state review and then FEMA review, and then it comes back to the counties. We've been doing this for the last 2 years. It's a long update, long process, and it's complicated because it is a regional plan. But regardless, I will be bringing that before the commission and requesting adoption. It's critical. I also bring it to the city council, town council, both in Whitehall and Boulder. If they choose to sign on, they don't have to, but again, it's in their best interest, just because if you don't have an active hazard mitigation plan, you do not qualify for certain grants. So it doesn't require you to do anything other than it prioritizes certain mitigation projects, and that's the stuff that we want to actively manage, and we do so through the LEPC meetings, local emergency planning committee meetings. So regardless, I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that that is on the near-term agenda for that'll show up for you guys. The other stuff, plans that I'm working on, creating a GIS template for evacuations. I've gotten into some GIS training myself, just specifically for emergency management. I have a GIS license now. I've taken some of those classes and training specifically for emergency management related stuff.
Not to take Melissa's job.
I do not want to take I do not want Melissa's job. She does a good job, but I don't want any, that's not something that I'm interested in.
Okay.
But again, just like the rest of us, she has a lot of stuff on her plate, and I have been working with her and getting some help from her on some of this. But regardless, the idea is, with this latest template, the GIS template, and Commissioner Doolittle will recall this, the evacuation pamphlet, and Commissioner Haggerty will remember the evacuation pamphlet booklet that we have. Well, there's a way to digitize that essentially, especially for the contact for the individuals. So we can go door to door, have a deputy or a fire member go up with this template that they can link to, they can fill it out. And then if there's cell coverage, which sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but if there is, then that automatically gets sent to the central repository. So we know exactly who's been talked to, who hasn't been talked to, we can keep track of it. Or if you're not in cell coverage, whenever that person comes back to cell coverage, they can upload that information. It's kind of like field maps. I don't know
Has
if you-
that been updated at all? I know that
It
we kind of
has,
talked
yep.
about that and I don't think it ever got done until.
Yep, no, we've been working on that. I play with that a little bit every year, adjust it a little bit. And yes, it is updated. The disappointing part of it is, it seems like the unity across different counties has changed with regard to what they call it. Evacuations themselves or pre-evacuation and all the different specific names that people have for those activities, which can be confusing for the public. So it's so important, in my opinion, to have a lot of public education before the season starts. That's a critical thing for us to do. And so, but regardless, does that answer your question? You have a follow-up?
Yep.
Okay. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to working on. And then, as I believe Ginger mentioned, the cybersecurity portion of some of the hazards that we face cybersecurity wise. I don't know if you've talked to Shane yet, and I'm sure he'll bring this up, but there's some gaps. And of course, with cybersecurity, everything costs money. So we're gonna have some grant stuff that we're gonna look at to try to go after to help plug some of those holes. I think some of the things can be accomplished that aren't cost prohibitive or even create a cost to us, because I think there's some practices that we can implement that would be beneficial. Of course, it's never easy, because if it's easy to get on your computer, then it's probably not very secure. So Shane can speak better to that. But of course, when it comes to hazard mitigation, that's kind of in my alley. And so it's important for us, in my opinion, to try to plug those holes where we can. And I think there's some low hanging fruit that we can accomplish that, both with our planning and with some of the SOGs, for lack of a better word, for what Shane is looking to do. And he'll have the details. I'm not an expert in that stuff, other than knowing how to identify some of our issues and ways to move forward. So we'll be working with him a lot on that. And then again, and I'll talk more about this in a little while, but I'm working on a UAS policy. Again, my acronyms, unmanned aerial system, drone policy. Whether this is going to apply, this is going to be up to the commissioners, but it'll be primarily geared towards the sheriff's office and what they will or won't do with a drone should we ever get one. But it's just setting ourselves up to try to get ahead of the game. I did get myself licensed. I have a Part 107 license, FAA. So commercial license, which as a government entity, we are required to do if we're going to fly drones.
But it would also help fire departments.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's the idea.
Rescue.
Search and rescue, or, and that's from my perspective. Of course, I'm from a fire perspective, and being able to, the power in the technology anymore is astounding. Some of the stuff that you can do with especially the combination of drones and AI and instant notification. And for example, flying somewhere and having it feed into this screen so you guys can sit here and see what's going on. Same with somebody in dispatch, same with somebody on the other side of the state. It's pretty incredible what you can do anymore for these. But the situational awareness is one of the biggest things. And of course, search and rescue is probably one of the biggest beneficiaries of getting a tool like that, a thermal drone specifically, because anyway, that's one of the items. But one of the things that you run into is people always want to get the cool toys and not be prepared for it. And so I'm asking a lot of questions with regard to that, so we can have some of those answered if we choose to move that direction. So that's one of the things on my plate. And then the big ones, of course, is rewriting the emergency operations plan, the EOP, which I first did. It's probably been almost 5 years now, and that needs to be updated again. I'd like to pare it back even more than I did last time. But planning is an ongoing process. It's something that I do almost every day. It's dealing, and so you have to nibble away at these things because you only have so many hours in a day. So emergency operations plan is going to be coming, and that will obviously come before the commissioners for adoption, as well as the councils in both Whitehall and Boulder, should they choose to assign. I'm also probably going to approach our fire trustees with that document, because there's some stuff in there and there's some question. This is a Steve question more than anything, as far as legality of who has authority to do what in certain instances. And I think it's going to be better off if we all can agree on a document, and that includes the county commissioner, the fire trustees, the trustees of any ambulance districts, for example, things like that. So if we can get people to see this document, have it efficient enough to actually be a readable document, and then people can make decisions on ahead of time, so we're not faced with some of the challenges that we do face. Anyway, then we also have the community wildfire protection plan that needs to be updated. I did that the last 2 times, so a lot of planning stuff that I do is part of my day. The other one of the other major time sinks for me is grants. I currently managing, I've been awarded 5 grants that I'm currently managing. One is the EMPG grant, which I get every year, funds my office still. That, of course, amount keeps going down annually. And hopefully there might be some legislative fixes to that, but we'll see.
Or something that replaces it.
Or something that replaces it, or, I mean, increases it. The biggest, one of the biggest issues, and I'll talk about this briefly, is the state's cut of that. And just like they take away the E911 money, they take a cut of the EMPG grant money, and it's super frustrating for local jurisdictions, so. But that funds half my office essentially, which is an important thing for all of us. Anyway, some of the other grants that I have currently ongoing is the DNRC grants, the local government assistance grant, LGA grant. It's about $10,000, a small grant for mitigation work for doing assessments on wildfire assessments on homes. That's a pass through to Tri-County Fire Safe Working Group. They do most of that work, but I have to manage the grant. I also got a grant for a DNRC grant for radio repeaters, which replaces our conventional radio repeaters because those are end of life in 2013. And this is one-time grant money that DNRC came up with that came out of the last legislature that we were awarded.
Where are those?
Where are,
Conventional repeaters, because they shouldn't be in any of the sheriff's office stuff.
it's in the, well, it's 890 and 261, those repeaters. So they're in the same, they're at the same hills as the trunking stuff.
Oh,
Which one?
I had them both up there. That's
Right, correct.
because we had the trunk
Yep.
system and the conventional
Yep.
system still there. Yeah, okay.
Yep,
That
yep,
makes sense.
yeah, no, they're
I
parallel.
was like, wait a minute.
No, and those are really important through foresight, being
Yeah.
able to maintain
In
that
case the
because,
trunking system
well,
goes
trunking,
down.
and it's
Yep.
down right now, and it's a state issue. It's not anything
Yep.
even that Tom Dunn can deal with, that we're dealing with. Trunking's down right now, and it's
Yeah.
out of our hands. And so that's why it's so critical to have these. And those were, like I said, end of life in
Yeah,
2013.
I'm sure they were.
So I've got new ones. Tom Dunn has them. They probably won't go in until the spring just because of the snow, unless he can get to it. But regardless, that's one of the grants that I'm managing. That was through CFPC. And I also annually manage the Fire Council VFC grant. That's actually been going up a little bit every year. And so that is a great partnership with the county because it was a real struggle for the individual fire departments to manage those grants and track all of them. Now we do it centrally. It's way more efficient, and we've actually gotten agreement from the fire departments on what to buy. And so it's super simplified. We're not chasing receipts and stuff like that, which was part of my stipulation. I said, I'll help with this as long as I don't have to have, I'm not chasing everybody down for time wise. I don't want it to be a time sake, but efficiency wise, that's a good one. So, and then our Homeland Security grant, we were successful last year. Got a $70,000 grant for a remote dispatch and radio simulcast. So it's essentially set up, and I have that trailer that I got through the DOD last year. So we can set up essentially remote dispatch. So it's like a console that you can put in that trailer or anywhere for that matter. Hook my Starlink up to it, and you can run dispatch from wherever you want. And then we also have the site, and in combination with that, we have a simulcast, for lack of a better word, system that's going to have 4 radios. So I can, if somebody is bring somebody in from Gallatin County, for example, and they use the 800 system, we can have an 800 radio. I will have an 800 radio in there and then simulcast them on whatever frequency we happen to be operating on, whether that's one of our conventional or trunking or whatever. So, and you can do that with 4 different radios. So it's a pretty powerful tool when we get a big incident with lots of help needed. So you don't have to worry about trying to get everybody. Again, the idea of the trunking system is to have everybody on the same banks, which we still have, but nobody knows how. Which is a little bit
It's not
frustrating.
everywhere.
No, it isn't everywhere, and that's one of the
That was
biggest
a huge
issues.
problem.
Absolutely, and still is. And there's no money to support it, but don't get me started.
I could go on,
Yeah.
because it
So-
just started out that way and.
No, it's really frustrating. So
Yep,
anyway,
I
so
get
I
it.
will be, that was last year's Homeland Security grant. This year I will be applying again for some other Homeland Security grant stuff. I actually did the math on this. I was just curious. And so I went back, and I don't know how exact this is, but I brought in $1.1 million in the last 10 years in grant funding to the county. So
I'm sure.
I'm
that's
pretty
great.
proud of that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
So anyway, emergency alert system, that's, we test monthly. That is the system that reverse 911, everybody likes to call it. That's proprietary.
Can't use
But
that.
we can't say that, exactly. I say that at every meeting, including, anyway, so we still use Code Red, and they're looking at, they've been telling us for the last year and a half, they're gonna upgrade their platform, the dashboard essentially, which is much needed. Hopefully that doesn't cause hiccups, but we'll see how that goes. It works very well. I'm happy for it. The emergency broadcast system, that's our low power FM radio stations. I don't manage those day to day as much anymore. Those were transferred to Bruce Binkowski's office, the events coordinator, because frankly, he does most of the stuff that's on there. But it is tied into my office specifically for emergencies, right? To let people know when we have the opportunity, when stuff's going on. And it's an important tool that is on a 10-year mill levy that's funded. That is still, I want to say we've got 4 or 5 more years on that. I'd have to look exactly. I gave that date to Bruce, so he's aware of that. So that's what funds that. Training, personal, now training, difference between training and exercise. Training is stuff that I'm doing, and then exercise is stuff that I put on. Training, what's that?
Doug, sorry.
No.
The emergency broadcast system.
Yep.
That grant or the levy that we did was gonna do backup generators. Did all that
Yep.
get done?
Yep, backup generators are in there, yep, and
Everything's
that
good.
was, yep, TSS managed that and installed all that stuff, and they have a new monitoring system for that, and so and that was one-time funding, the money for
Get that.
those generators themselves, the funding that comes in from mill levy just for operation.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that was a one-time pot for that specific project, and
Okay.
everything else is after that,
It's just
so.
operational.
Yep,
Okay.
is operational. So, and I think it's like a $500,000 or something like that, but,
Mhm.
anyway, so does that answer your
Yes,
question?
yeah.
Okay. So training wise, I love learning stuff. So again, the GIS training I mentioned on there. I'm also working on my CEM, Certified Emergency Manager credential, which is something that's put on by the International Association of Emergency Managers. I think there's like 3 or 4 in Montana. And it's just something that professionally I'd like to do because I've been in this business for long enough that I feel like I could qualify. So I may be coming to you guys for some information on that. As far as exercise stuff, I am teaching ICS courses. I am a train the trainer. I took the train the trainer course. So I teach certified to train ICS up through 400 and some of those courses in person, which we are putting 2 on in February. I've reached out. The health department, I think, is sending a bunch of their folks. I think the sheriff's office is going to send some folks. And of course, I put the invitation out to fire EMS and the road department and anybody else that can come. So we're doing 2 sessions in order to try to provide flexible time. So doing those, of course, I do my annual hazmat awareness training with everybody that I can get scheduled, which is important. And then we do preseason hazard exercises. We do the big one is for wildfire in the spring. We do what used to be called the South Hills Plan is now the Quad County Pre-Plan, which I wrote, and that one is going to be we move that around. I think it's going to be in Montana City this spring, but we do that for wildfire. We try to do it for winter things. So we involve dispatch, we involve the fire departments, we involve law enforcement, EMS, and the road department oftentimes, and also solid waste. So because there's components to all of that. So we do a lot of that training annually, and then of course, as requested as needed. And if anybody has topics that they're interested in or think we need gaps filled, I'm happy to do that. On the response side of things, I primarily do large incident support and coordination. I don't go out on every incident because frankly, that's the local jurisdiction's job, but if they ask for me, and I am happy to come and provide any assistance. I don't have jurisdictional authority over anybody, but I do provide coordination on big stuff. One of the things I do want to mention is that we have not had a major incident in Jefferson County in quite a few years. And it's only a matter of time. I was looking at the, well, I was looking at the data, even the wildfires, like last year was kind of a statewide, it was kind of an average year. Jefferson County, we only had 60 some wildfires. That's really, really low. And the year before, we only had like 20 something.
Right.
So we have not had a big incident in a while. We're gonna have one. And so that's, of course, that my line of work is the sky is falling, right? But we just need to be ready for these, when things get busy. And I don't want us to have a false sense of security. That's the only reason I bring that up, is to make sure that, I of course will provide, a lot of the integration and coordination between yourselves, and that's in my fire warden role, with any teams that we host, and then of course also coordinating with the agencies such as Forest Service, DNRC, things like that. So when we have incidents, I like to text, to provide you information. If it bothers you, if it's too late, tell me and I won't do it, but I usually try to get stuff off my plate as soon as I can, because there's a lot going on. So regardless, I want to make sure that you guys have the information that you need. And if you're not, call me. I'm anytime, 24/7. My number is always available. So
My phone number hasn't changed. So.
my number at well, that's what I was gonna ask, is I had my phones, both my phones took a dive, so I need to get your phone. So mitigation, I won't go into the specifics. I asked Lois Olson, who's now the president of Tri-County Fire Safe. I asked her to create a little summary for all of you for Tri-County, and some of the stuff that they've done in the last year. That's included in the little packet there, so I'll let you read that on your own time. And if you have questions, please follow up with me. Recovery side of things, again, recovery, if we have not faced anything substantial, and this is where I do want to bring in my thanks and in my ability to participate in the incident management teams that I'm a part of, which has enabled me to be involved in some pretty major incidents, and being able to do that and have the perspective of what we could face in the future is somewhat sobering, to understand what the challenges that we could face, both in time and staffing and cost. So we could do a chief elected officials workshop again on this stuff at some point in the future. But I'm only partway through my list, so I'm going to speed through. If you have questions, let me know. Other areas that I work on, the LEPC, of course, is Local Emergency Planning Committee. That's one of the things I do. Fire Council, thank you for this. Subdivision hazard reviews, I still do that. I'm providing input to our growth policy and subdivision regulations, working with Melissa on a lot of addressing and mapping issues. Do a lot of radio and programming operations, specifically with some of the headaches that we have. That I do want to try to get more people trained to, because it's a single point of failure right now. It's me that does this stuff. It's important. I am going to try and train. There's some folks that have expressed interest, but I think it can't just be me, frankly. So anyway, that's where we are with that. It's taken me 10 years to learn it. So I'm not the quickest learner. So again, I mentioned my drone license. Then of course I do a lot of public information work for the sheriff's office specifically, but also for my stuff. And then I'm also the fire warden. So, and I report to you guys specifically in that role, which the fire warden does debris burning restrictions, stage restrictions. I do that incident coordination, as I mentioned. One of the items to keep on your radar is that unprotected private land question that we always deal with. There's areas of the county that are not in a fire district and not in federally or state protection. So for a wildfire. So, and who does that fall to? That falls to the county commissioners, who then put that through to the county rural fire chief, of which I was also appointed for your protection. I will just skip through some of these other items. One of the other things to keep in mind on wildfire investigation, as far as the fire warden role goes, is I did complete my NWCG National Wildfire Coordinating Group wildfire investigator training. So I'm a certified wildfire investigator for NWCG. And because of that, the Helen Interagency Fire Investigation Team asked if I would be part of there when we had it. So I said, well, yes, if you're going to come to our county when we ask for you. So I said, I'll take part of it as long as when I can, as long as you're willing to come and work for this. So it's Lou Antonek and some of those folks, you know. So I'll be on that team when available in all my free time.
Do you have any?
Yeah, not a lot, but I mean, without kids in the house now, I really am enjoying a lot of the stuff that I do. So one note, just as a reminder, is the structure fire component, that is not a role in the fire warden. Fire warden is specifically related to wildfire, right? Structure fire investigation, structure fire issues like standards and regulations, that all goes to the state fire marshal's office. So there's some confusion on that if anybody ever asks. Professional involvement, I'm still on the Fire Safe Montana Board of Directors. I'm also, as I mentioned, a member of the Montana DNRC Incident Management Team. I'm also president of the Montana Emergency Managers Association for the last time. I already said this is my last one. I'm taking that hat off. It's a 2-year term and I'm done, but I've done it for, I want to say 6 years now. Because on that role, I also serve on the Governor's Senior Advisory Committee and the State Emergency Response Commission and the State Training and Professional Development Committee. So give input. The good thing is I think it gives us a lot of opportunity to provide input from a small jurisdiction's perspective on a lot of the issues that we're facing. And of course, a lot of that stuff is coming to the head right now with the legislature. So I'll be staying involved in that, specifically with Montana DES. And then just for the last to sum up here on for your situational awareness, the Title III expenditures, I am going to probably come and talk to you guys. I've already spoke with Commissioner Kirsch briefly about this. I understand there might be some funding left over in the Title III accounts, which is the Secure Rural Schools funding, and specifically for UAS. And I know that there's a process for that. Commissioner Kirsch, you had mentioned that we need start of the year, we can talk about doing that. And so I would be interested. Of course, you don't make a decision until the public comments been through there, and I'll provide information. But my specific ask is going to be for a thermal drone, something that we could use for search and rescue, someone that we could use for fire size up, something we can use for law enforcement capabilities, whether that's searching for somebody that's ran into the woods, which we tend to get every once in a while, and then specifically for the search and rescue component would be the biggest one. So I am licensed in that. I will be bringing that up to your attention in the future. I put a little list of what we've spent that on before. The county events ordinance discussion, that's another item that should be on that. We've been meeting. We have a small working group with Commissioner Kirsch and Steve Haddon and Megan, and it sounds like sounds a potential solution. We'll visit more about that, but that's just on your radar because of some of the concerns that have been brought to the fore, specifically with related to cost of managing the large events that we have in the county and the liability that the county sees because of our involvement in that. So that needs to be on your radar. The other thing that I don't have a specific solution yet, but I am interested in, so there's e-dispatches and there's I am responding for those of you that are familiar with notifications to our emergency responders, whether that's fire, EMS, search and rescue. There's other capabilities that we could use something like that for, and I'd love to see a county-wide version of that. Right now, each agency is funding that, they're on their own. I think there could be some cost efficiencies if we were able to figure out a way to have a centralized county version of that. And then the ability to coordinate the response from lots of different agencies, so everybody knew who was coming, who was there, and sending messages specifically to those counties, I think would be a useful tool. I was hoping to have a cost quote in by now. I put in a cost quote from those folks just to have an idea of what that would cost, because obviously it's more per user. So when you're talking about a fairly substantial user base increase from each agency, I would imagine the cost should be less than it would be on an individual basis for those agencies.
I am responding with unlimited.
Right, well,
As an example.
right, well, I am responding, and they're one that they're unlimited to a degree. They ask how many calls for service you
Oh,
get
that,
per
I meant
year.
members, I'm sorry.
No. So it's based on call volume, and so that's one that is certainly going to be one that I'm interested in looking at, and I'd like to see an option for that countywide. How much that costs and where the funding comes from. That's not a great grant opportunity for that because it's an annual subscription, and grants are not a good source for something that costs something every year. Anyway, that's part of that. That's the other thing that I want to make sure is on your radar is the public safety power shutoffs. that the power companies are going through, both from a county perspective and from a constituent perspective. They had some serious miscues on how they rolled that out in the last year, which I've been harping on them about for 2 years. And they may have learned their lesson, because I know they had hired a public information officer after this last year, which they should have done before, which we were all telling
And
them.
I don't think they ever explained the purpose of it.
No,
If they did, they didn't do it very well,
they didn't.
because I think they were pushing the wildfire mitigation stuff with the winds and everything, but they never really said why they're doing this.
Right. Yeah, there's, and how they would do it.
Right.
And under what
where.
conditions, and who would be impacted. I mean, there's so many unanswered questions that, anyway, so but that needs to be on your radar, because folks are gonna complain about that when they happen, or when they talk about happening. So, and then also the digital run card conversion, that's not that's kind of a longer term issue with the development of NG 911 stuff that we're working with Melissa on, as well as the response agencies. And its integration into our computer aided dispatch system. The last item, and I do want to bring up, is parkland fuels mitigation. At some point, I think, and I haven't seen the plan specifically for the new parkland that was acquired on the north end, but there are parkland that belong to the county, as I understand it, that have, we get calls from, the one that comes to mind specifically, I know, is in Montana City, for an area that's, I don't know, 20, up in there, and there's the trees just, I mean, it's just overgrown and needs to be fuels mitigated. And so that's another project. I'm sure that there's others like that out there that need some tree work. We had a pretty cool partnership with Montana DNRC this last year. It was kind of a pilot program where they sent their sawyers out for training and did some roadside mitigation stuff. And then Bear Taylor did some cleaned it up. And so it was kind of a cool partnership to get some work done that didn't really cost us anything but time. So anyway, looking for different options for that, but I think that's something that we want to be an example, right? We want to be a good example of if we're telling people they need to mitigate their property, we should be doing the same thing, right? So anyway, that is my summary. More long-winded than you probably wanted, which is I'm good at.
You gonna do this every paper then?
I'm hopeful not to be as, of course, I would provide as much information as you'd like, but
We better book them an hour at a time.
I wanted to be able to give you an overview, and then, like I said, when we do the quarterly, kind of something more related to those hot topics.
It'll shorten it up. If we're
Absolutely.
doing it quarterly.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep, should. Of course, I talk a lot, so.
What emergency planning plan did the state take on that took it away from the counties, but they haven't been able to do it? Which one was that?
That's a hazard mitigation plan, the one that I was mentioning at the top, where
Okay.
that's the one that and it's a train wreck, and that's. My goal is to do that, and it's gonna be a tall ask, but my goal is the next time is to do it myself.
Okay.
It's a tough one because of the FEMA inspection regime that it has to go through. It's the PDM, the pre-disaster mitigation plan, original one, which it's very data intensive. And so because of that, most people contract it out. But every time you contract something out, you lose a part of the ownership of it. And then in this case, the idea was reasonable in that hopefully there would be some efficiencies in combining these regions. But the proof in the pudding, and I suppose the writing should have been on the wall. We should have known better, but there was only Gallatin County, Missoula County were the only counties that didn't opt in. And now we're all going, oh, we should have done that. Of course, they have the funding and the staff in order to be able to do these things
Right.
themselves,
Yeah.
but it's a challenge, and we'll get through it, and it's not gonna be a perfect product, but we can edit it. That's the beauty of these plans. After it comes back from FEMA, I'm planning on adding some stuff and been very engaged in that process. It's a long process, specifically because of all the hands that are involved in that, but it's getting close. I'll be bringing it up, and it's a critical thing for us to adopt as a county and the local jurisdictions, because if you don't have that when the bad day comes, you don't qualify for some grants.
Sure.
All that's gonna do is penalize the folks in your jurisdiction. There's some stuff in there that I know politically it can be untenable for some folks, but it's either you and it doesn't commit you to do anything, but there's some things in there that you just have to have in order to qualify for federal grant money.
Sure.
Is what it comes down to. So, anyway, any other questions?
Guys have any other questions for Doug?
I do not.
You have my, yeah, like I said, 24/7, anytime, even if I'm not here, my phone still generally works wherever I am, so.
Any changes in regards to radios in terms of the trunking, whether it be mobile or portables, will you let me know?
Yes.
And I'm asking on behalf of Search and Rescue.
Yes, well, and I'm really frustrated with trunking right now, and I had a meeting last night, as I said, with some of the state players, because Lewis and Clark County has a lot of control over the system, and if the problem isn't occurring in Lewis and Clark County, our ability to effect rapid fixes is limited, and that's super frustrating.
Since day one.
And that's always, yep, and it hasn't changed, and I was pretty blunt last night in my conversation with some of the guys. Charlie wasn't there, Gilmore, he's the Lewis and Clark County radio guru. He knows more about it than in his left pinky than I do. But they need more people to manage it, and it needs to be decentralized, and they need more people, more expertise. But of course, it'll cost money, right? And it's
Well, and that was the problem with it, is you either did it the way they wanted you to do it, or you didn't get any of the money.
right.
I was on that committee on the
Right.
financial portion of it, and
Yep.
you either did what they wanted or the money
Yep.
didn't come.
And again, I can't say how important it is that we have our own sites. That is so important that we own that stuff.
We own
That,
all of
that
them.
you were able to do that ahead of time and didn't get rid of that. That is so important that we maintain that. And it is expensive,
And you
but-
own a lot of the equipment on them,
right? A lot of it,
And
not all of
building.
it. Some of
but
the,
most of it.
most of it, the,
Excel Heights is split up quite a bit, even with towers, but a lot of it's brand new. Boulder Hill,
yep,
I mean, we share it with DOT, but
yep. So important to maintain that stuff. Again, it's
Yeah.
expensive, but when things go wrong,
you don't wanna give them up.
yep. So anyway, that's, we'll certainly let you know when things are going, and hopefully we can get that thing back up and going again here shortly. I pester and Tom Dunn daily, hourly almost, because it's,
He enjoys that.
yeah, oh, I know, whether he likes it or not. So, anyway, I appreciate the time from everybody. If you have questions, please call me.
Always do. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
could I get a copy of the